Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. I'm your host, Tomás Garza, and I've got a very special workbook idea and show in store for you today. Now, they're all special, especially to me, as this has been the centerpiece of my own spiritual practice for the last 8 years here. I'm talking about A Course in Miracles. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and there's so much that I want to cover here and every day. But above all, I really enjoy the ability to interact with you live or on the replay. So whether you catch this show live or not, please feel welcome to leave any questions or comments that you may have in the comment thread here on Facebook. This is a daily live stream, and I've interacted with so many of you from all over the world. So again, I really, really value your questions, your comments. What I'm doing this for is to show up and be a resource for you. I am here to share my experience with A Course in Miracles and with spirituality in general, universal spirituality that we're talking about. It's a common thread to all of us. And you may have a vastly different practice than I do. You may have vastly different upbringings than I do. However, I think that it's all about a community, and the more people that we have sharing their own experience, the more people we will all reach. And I know that that is the reason why this network, Enlightened World Network, exists, is to reach people. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing, sharing all of this with you, including everything that I've done horribly wrong with the workbook and in spirituality in general, because I think that really we do learn from each other. Everything literally is shared, and it's about a shared experience. So you'll notice, if you've been following along here, that from time to time I'll pose a question. Last week I heard from a number of you as to how spirituality has changed and transformed you. And if you haven't answered that one, feel welcome to share with us here in the comments. How has this transformed you, this journey, your spiritual journey, whatever that has involved, whatever that has looked like for you? How are you a different person today as compared with the day you began? It's a great question, because all too often, and this will play into what I want to talk about today with the Course in Miracles, all too often we think that we're not doing things right, don't we? We think that just because we don't see leaps and bounds progress one moment to the next, that somehow we're not doing it right, that something must be amiss, or maybe it's us, or maybe it's just the text or the methodology that you're employing and practicing. Maybe it's something. And a question like this is really, really helpful. It's really handy, because we tend to give up on ourselves, don't we? I mean, not just in spiritual practice, in life in general, but this is a long standing life lesson for just about every single one of us, is that we tend to want to quit when we feel like we're not doing things right, or we're not receiving the gratification that we thought we would get. And what is really important for us to consider is a question like the one I'm posing here. How has your spiritual path transformed you? Because that's how you see progress. It's very rarely in a blinding flash. Now, if you've had something like that, fantastic. I hope you share about that. Please do if you haven't. Yeah, whether it's here or in some other forum, yeah, if you've had those kind of spontaneous awakening experiences, and I know many people that have, it's possible, this is something that is greatly transformative. It takes time to process and integrate. And for those of us that don't have those blinding flashes, I don't have them. It's been a really a process for me. And while I have glimpses moment to moment to moment that are very profound and require integration of my own, especially in the last year, I've had a number of experiences, usually during the early morning from 2 to 5 a.m. usually, that will require my kind of recalibrating the following day. It's a lot of teaching, a lot of information. Maybe you're experiencing this yourself, or you know somebody who is. You can call them downloads, uploads, energetic upgrades, whatever it is that you want to call it. It's an experience. So whether you're having those or not, it's valuable to take a look at right now in your life today. How are you different as a result of spiritual practice? And if you've been doing it for a while, you will most likely be able to look at your own life and see that you're different. And that can be very, very handy. And when you look at it day to day, moment to moment, and nothing seems to change, then, well, I mean, that's kind of a common occurrence. That's where a lot of us give up on ourselves, whether it's A Course in Miracles in the workbook or anything else, really anything else. What I'm talking to about today applies to all of life. It's handy to look back and see how far you've really come. And if you do that, I'm willing to bet that you will see a lot of change. You may notice that you are a completely different person as a result of your practice. And serve, let this experience serve as motivation for you moving forward, because you are getting results and nothing is ever lost. It can be very difficult for us as human beings to start a new habit, but it is part of our own self-care. And we'll talk about this when we talk about today's workbook lesson. It's so worth instilling a new habit. We have bad habits, don't we, all the time? I mean, we get lazy, and people use the term spiritually lazy. Isn't laziness in general, whatever label we put on it? We are always looking for, by our own conditioning and programming, we're always looking for the quickest fix, aren't we? Immediate short-term gratification. And of course, today's media world and the internet just feeds off of that. And if we want to, we can get completely distracted and pulled away from everything that is really worthwhile in our lives. And, I'm not just talking about spirituality here, I'm talking about everything. There's a lot of distractions out there, aren't there? So spiritual practice is about loving yourself. This is all about love. This is why the subtitle of this live stream is Awakening to Love, is this is all about love and making a choice to love yourself. It's so worth it to develop a good practical habit like meditation, like prayer, whatever that is in your spiritual practice. Very important. And a workbook for students in A Course in Miracles is just another way that people can do this. I love it because it gives us something to do. That's the real beauty of it here, is that it's a self-study course that gives you something to do. So think of how far you've come. Bet it's further than you give yourself credit for, right? Because we're always underestimating ourselves, aren't we? I mean, we're always our toughest critic. Nobody else is. It may feel like it some days. I mean, you may go to work in an office setting, or even if it's virtual right now. You may have a boss at work, and you feel like he or she is really tough on you. But we're always toughest on ourselves. No question about that, right? Right. Yeah. So, lesson 73 in the workbook for students. Short idea, very profound. I will there be light. Lesson 73. Today's idea is I will there be light. All right, mic drop. Yeah. So, what do we mean by this? It means that our will is shared with God. They are one and the same. Our will and God's will are completely the same. The will of the ego is not the same. And the fundamental difference is the ego doesn't share, right? Our will and God's are shared, with an emphasis on shared, as in joined, one with, one, same. The ego doesn't share because it's all about me, 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 me. Literally, that's how we run our lives. It may sound harsh if you've not heard this particular depiction of it before, but it's how we run our lives. Me, 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 me. What's in it for me? And that's the question that the ego's always asking. How can I get something from somebody? Because in seeing yourself as cut off and separate, you see other people as cut off and separate. And then all of a sudden, you appear to be competing for finite resources. You appear to be competing for jobs. You appear to be competing at the supermarket for things like toilet paper and eggs. I don't know how that flashed into my mind, but memories of a year ago and mad dashes on hand sanitizer and toilet paper and flour. I think people were baking a lot of cookies last March and April, right? So, yeah, lots of real interesting memories that I know all of us will carry with us for a long time. But the point here is that we see ourselves as cut off and separate, and the ego, separate sense of self, is all about me, 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 me. Our will's not like that. So our real will is shared with God. It is light. I will there be light. There is light that has never gone anywhere and is never going to go anywhere. We can choose to hide our eyes from it, or we could choose to walk through the clouds, so to speak, the fog bank that A Course in Miracles talks about, an illusory thin veil of clouds that seems to stand between us and the truth of who we really are. We can just choose to walk right through that. And I hope that you may choose to do that today and every day, because we choose yet again every moment. This does mean, yes, if you're wondering, we do have to stay vigilant. Yeah, for sure. For sure, because we've been habituated and attenuated to say, me, 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 what's in it for me? I mean, whether you think of yourself as a selfish person or not doesn't really matter. If we identify with the ego, that is selfish, quite honestly. It is selfish, it is combative, and all that it takes, if this is something that is resistant, if you're experiencing some resistance to this idea, that's absolutely perfectly normal, right? There is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, what the, really? Question everything. I mean, but make sure, of course, that you're questioning everything, including the foundations of everything that you now believe. Yeah. Nothing more, nothing less. All right. So we have a choice, love or fear. It's worth saying every day on this live stream because it's true. And as adult learners, we're horribly stubborn, aren't we? All of us, myself included, not everybody. Everybody, we all need to hear things many times before the time arrives where we finally get it, or the time arrives when we finally decide to take action, where we finally choose love. And the picture of the world that we see mirrors what is inside of us. As we've talked about here, and the Course talks about extensively in many different ways, salvation's inside of us. In other words, happiness is an inside job. It's internal. It's not found in exterior objects. You might find some momentary gratification in a hot new lover, or a beautiful meal, perhaps. You might find a new car really gratifying, till somebody runs into it or bangs their cart into your brand new paint job at the shopping center or something. It happens, right? Yeah. The picture of our world mirrors what's going on, and we have a choice of light or darkness. Will there be light? Will it? In other words, And that's not a question, as in will there or won't there be? There always is and there always has been. This is an invitation to all of us to say, I choose light over darkness. Darkness represented by the ego, where we're all fighting like dogs for what seem like finite resources. In fact, there are no limitations of any kind at all. And we talked a minute ago about passing through the illusory veil of clouds. We can walk right through them. They may appear thick and menacing, scary, and highly substantial, but we can just walk right through them. Such is the strength of our power of choice. And let's all realize that we don't want to suffer. As much as we may love things like sugar that may make us suffer. It could be even more severe than that, like alcohol or drugs. It could be a gambling addiction, could be any number of different things in the world that make us suffer. Ultimately, we don't want suffering, do we? We don't want all the baggage that comes with it. We don't want to feel horrible about ourselves, about other people, and about the world. Ultimately, I mean, you can argue as much as you want that you do want that. You don't want that. None of us does. None of us does. And that's simply the way of it. What this means is that we want to accept God's plan, or your the source's plan, the universe's plan, your higher self's plan, your guide's plan for salvation, whatever term you want to use. We want to accept that because we share in it. It's one with us. Our will is the same as that. So it's very profound, and you would be absolutely right if you're saying, well, okay, it all comes down to a choice right now in the present moment. Yes. Yes, indeed. This is where all the action is. And today, lesson 73 in the workbook, in the commentary, which I highly encourage you to read, you can read this online too. You can actually do a Google search of A Course in Miracles workbook lesson 73 if you don't own the book or have an online resource, and there are many of those. Google it and it will show you the day's idea, I will there be light, along with the accompanying description, which includes suggestions for how to take this idea and apply it. In other words, to practice it in your daily life. And it's worthwhile to simply repeat, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. It's not my will. And let's hope that it's not yours either. And if you're sincere about this, just recite this to yourself. Yeah, darkness is not my will. The ego is not my will. Suffering is not my will. Pain, misfortune are not my will. All right. And that is lesson 73 here in the workbook for students. So let's take a look, and we'll see who's joining us here live today. We've got a few people that are on. Thank you for joining. Maria, hello, how are you? And Thomas, hello. Stephanie, hi. Robin, thank you all for joining us. And so question, Thomas, how can I get this workbook? Thank you for joining me. I love this. Yeah, beautiful question. The workbook for students is one of three main components of the self-study curriculum called A Course in Miracles. So there are three components. One, there's a text. Two, the workbook for students. And three is what we call a manual for teachers. I'll show you what I've got here. And I'll just bring it up here for the camera. I've got this book, and it's an all-in-one edition. It says A Course in Miracles. I've had it for 8 years, and it's literally traveled the world with me, so it's a little bit worn off right here. But this is the combined edition, so that is available. And the actual, if you prefer, a paper cover book like I do that you can touch. Now, there are also online resources. There are a number of online apps and a lot of information online through a Google or an internet search about the workbook for students. And this is what I chose to do because I like to have everything all in one place. And I'm old-fashioned. I prefer to touch. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I need to be touching something as well as looking at it and even, reciting it, talking to myself about it. Yeah, I need to have all of that in play to really help myself learn. So yeah, great question. There are print and online resources available. And also there are a number of groups around the world that deal exactly with A Course in Miracles. There are study groups. There are all kinds of things depending on where you live in the world. So thank you very much. I appreciate that question. Yes. And well, thank you. Hi, guys, for thank you for tuning in. This is a lot of fun for me. And if you think about it, the live stream is going to end here in a couple of minutes. But think about the question: how has my practice changed me? Yeah, how am I a different person now as compared with when I started? And I'll bet that you'll be able to find a lot of ways in which you are a fundamentally different person as a result of spiritual practice, which means as a result of making the choice in the present moment, whenever that was for you to begin this practice. And it's a process. Yeah, and of course, there are days when it doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere. But if you continue to show up and choose love, which is the choice that we make, love instead of fear, every moment of every day, then you will, in time, see what's likely to be a profound result. And yeah, one way you can measure that is, how do you feel now? Right? How are you different? But also, how do you feel now compared with when you started out? And if you feel lighter, if you feel more powerful, if you feel more joyful, more happy, more energized, not necessarily just physically energized, but spiritually energized, emotionally lighter, kinder, more forgiving. Yeah, if any of those or anything related to that applies, then I invite you to continue to practice, to continue to show up and lead and teach and practice because it's working for you. And if it's working for you, you can bet that it's having a beautiful and profound ripple effect throughout the world, which is the point. It's why we're all here. Okay, so thank you all for tuning in. And a reminder, if you're just joining me for the first time, this is a daily live stream. So I would invite you to check the show guide in Enlightened World Network's Facebook page every day, which will have the day's programming. And I will see you back here tomorrow. And feel welcome to leave comments or questions here. I will check those throughout the day. And have a great